anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
That was the magic of Tiger to me. Why did my mom care about when Tiger was playing? Because you might see something with every shot that you've never seen before. And that was, to me, the magnetic quality. And those guys have a little bit of that, but there aren't a ton of them. So to have those guys in the mix on the big weeks is great for the game.
The Smiley Show, only on Sport.
Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on the early line on this Wednesday morning. He is Donnie. I am Ben. To start off this second hour, with still 2 more to go, up until 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll talk some ramifications from the 2025 NFL Draft, playing our favorite game, buy or sell, around the National Football League, with some final draft discussions. Then we will also be joined later in this second hour by our coach, James Young, JY, to give you his thoughts and his reactions to everything we saw last night around the association. 4 games, that's a quadruple header of NBA playoff tilt, and of course a doubleheader of Game 5s tonight. The Rockets' referendum to save the integrity of the regular season. We head back to H-Town for game number 5, and the Lakers in LA trying to keep their season alive, down 3-1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Both of our home teams and our home favorites, DRS, tonight are the ones that could have their season come to a close.
Yeah, here's what we need to see tonight, too, first off, because there's 2 games out here. And, the commissioner of the NFL, you see Roger Goodell, he'll go to, some of the big games of the week, and they show him in the press box there. If you see Adam Silver in Los Angeles, or if there's word, can we get a flight tracker? That means an automatic blowout victory for the Lakers, that he's there to make sure that's exactly what takes place here. That's what I need to know tonight. But also, from a perspective for the Golden State Warriors, they ain't favored tonight, and I agree. Also, the Lakers, 5.5 favorites. I absolutely agree with that as well. I think we have both home teams staving off elimination in this because why? It's good for business, but more importantly, the Lakers cannot get knocked out of round 1 in the playoffs. Again, let's see where Adam Silver is watching this game from tonight.
The Lakers were close to a $2 favorite entering game 1 of this opening round. They are now playing with their backs against the wall and their season on the brink. DRS, we start with NFL Draft, buy or sell, and our reactions to what we saw around the NFL Draft this past weekend in Green Bay, in what it means now for the rookies taking that next step to this next level. We start, of course, with the story of the 2025 NFL Draft and the Shedeur Sanders slide. Here are the odds for Sanders not to be a first round or top 5 or top 10 pick, but the number 1 overall pick throughout the entirety of last year's college football and NFL season, and even in the early portion of the offseason. DRS, September 2024, plus 380. One of the 3 best prices to be that first overall pick. Gets shorter and shorter as each and every month goes through that college football campaign, and he continues to set single season and career marks at Colorado and during his collegiate playing days. Even at the end of the college football season, even entering week 17, when the Giants should have been the team drafting first overall. It was Sanders, not Cam Ward, not Travis Hunter, not Abdul Carter, as a minus money favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. Where Sanders was drafted, 143 slots later, with pick number 144 overall in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns. So DRS, that's the odds perspective on what we saw for Shedeur Sanders. The question to you is this: buy or sell? Shedeur Sanders' slide was the biggest surprise in NFL draft history.
I'm going to buy that. And not so surprising of where he went, but just, again, the theater of it all. Like, typically, like, hey, that's a surprise. He didn't go number 1, he went number 7. Or, man, I can't believe he's around at pick 23. Expect him to go 10. Oh, wow, he's around on day number 2. Definitely expected him to be a round number 1 player. This was one of those guys that, again, you saw that. The betting markets had him favorite in the year of 2025, the same year as the draft. All through college football season, the hype around Shedeur Sanders and Colorado, and how would he do, and going through the ranks where it was him versus Cam Ward, made the best, pro day win, and certainly the biggest loser in that environment was Shedeur Sanders. Not because we don't think he might be able to be a good player in the NFL, but the fact is, you are number 1 overall pick with a ton of money in your pocket and a ton of resources at your service to be a franchise quarterback, and now you're fighting for your life just to actually make a roster as a 5th-round pick for the Cleveland Browns. Like, there was other shot. Like, I always like to equate it back to the Eagles. Like, hey, they drafted Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson a pick later than that. Like, that's crazy. But crazy to think that you could be number 1 overall and then make it to the 5th round and you didn't get into a car accident or damage your wrist or your arm or, hurt your shoulder or blow your knee out when you were trying to get ready for the actual combine here. That drop was so crazy to watch it play out that it has to be. We've never seen something like that happening on draft day before.
Yeah, DRS, I completely agree. I'm buying this notion as well. Of course, we have seen players snubbed. We have seen players have great success drafted on day number 3. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, just to name a few. Not that all of those guys, of course, are on the same tier or have had the same level of success. We have seen guys slide perhaps past where we expected. Aaron Rodgers falling all the way to number 24 in the opening round and had to sit there with the cameras on him. Even Will Levis, just a few years ago, DRS, in the build-up to the draft, we thought of Levis, even though I thought it was incorrect the entire time, as a top 10, top 5, even number 1 overall pick. But that was really some weird odds optimism and not necessarily in the stock. And Levis didn't have to wait until day 3 or round 5, second pick of the 2nd round. What we have seen from Levis so far in his NFL playing days proves that notion correct. He should have never even been flirted for 1st round consideration. But Shedeur Sanders was not a guy that rose up the draft boards in the final few weeks or final few days before the NFL draft, or was a workout warrior at the combine or his pro day, and a guy that we thought maybe would be the 4th quarterback off the board now might be in consideration to go 1st overall. You saw it there. When Shedeur Sanders was actually playing football collegiately at Colorado, he was the minus money favorite, the odds-on favorite to go 1st overall. So it was his draft stock that even in the draft cycle took a big shot and, of course, was on a tremendous slide throughout the duration of the NFL draft. Again, we have said it a few times, DRS. For Shedeur Sanders not to be a 1st-round pick, all right, I think I could buy into that. For Shedeur Sanders to be a 5th-round pick, that is the shocker, that is the stunner, and that is why I buy that notion. It is the most surprising slide we have ever seen in draft history.
Yeah, and it seems like now he has a chance to certainly be a good NFL player if, he comes in and works hard, but also understand from a Cleveland perspective where you're going into an environment, it's like, hey, kid, got you as a steal. They're going like, we might have got you as a steal, but Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than you, so let's see what you can do, and you're going to get 4th and 5th most snaps here in training camp to try to prove a point here, and with all backup guys that probably won't be on the roster by the time we actually have our final cutdowns here. So I'm interested to see how he actually goes about it, because I do think he can be a successful quarterback in the NFL, humbled right out of the gate for, I don't know if he treated things appropriately, but also the fun part of this would have been, honestly, to take another dig at the Giants. Like, The Giants didn't have the number 1 overall pick because they messed up late in the season by winning a football game they had no business doing. But at least with the Tennessee Titans, like, they came to an agreement that Cam Ward was the best quarterback in the draft. Now we're hearing through the tea leaves that the Giants also thought the same thing. But am I wrong to think, like, if the Giants had the number 1 overall pick, like, they would be flipping a coin between Shedeur Sanders and also Cam Ward, and probably would have chose Shedeur Sanders because how bad that organization is, where maybe they were lucky they didn't get the number 1 overall pick because they really would have messed it up. And it was almost foolproof. That's like, the evaluation process, I wonder why they didn't like Shedeur Sanders. Okay, maybe we don't like him either, and we go Abdul Carter, which was the right move overall. But I always like a chance to knock the Giants one last time, which they probably went Shedeur number 1 overall if they had that pick.
Listen, it wasn't Cam Ward that wore the Giants' cleats to the Pop-Tarts Bowl. It was Shedeur Sanders that did exactly that in the Alamo Bowl. Played pretty poorly. The Giants then lost the first overall pick, and Sanders ends up in round 5. Again, we'll never probably get the full picture on why the slide occurred, but it was, in fact, the most shocking. More around the NFL draft, including next year. Next.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
The number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, that was Cam Ward. For the 3rd time in the last 3 years, a quarterback goes first overall. For the 7th time in the last 8 drafts, a quarterback goes first overall. And we are expecting it to be a quarterback for 2026. But DRS, had we done this, and I'm sure we did exactly a year ago, the guys listed as the favorites with the shortest prices to go first in 2025 did not even get close. Cam Ward was around 18-1, 20-1. It wasn't like he was the longest shot that nobody had ever heard of, but the guys that we thought would be in consideration to go 1 of 1 in 2025 did not. So take that with a grain of salt as we look at the 2026 NFL Draft number 1 overall odds out right now on FanDuel. And of course, a very familiar last name at the top of the board. Arch Manning, plus 240. To follow in the footsteps of his uncle Eli as the first overall pick. Peyton, of course, drafted second. Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for LSU, second best price. Drew Aller, QB at Penn State, third best. Lenora Sellers, quarterback at South Carolina, fourth best. And Cade Klubnik, the quarterback at Clemson, plus 750. Those 5 guys separated by just about $5. But we focus on the famous last name and the new signal caller in Austin. That is Arch Manning. It is his Texas team in 2025. So buy or sell, DRS. Arch Manning, who is favored to do so, will be the first pick in the 2026 NFL Draft.
This is going to be a fun one. I'm going to start off by saying buying it, because you look at the other names on the list and you say somebody's got to be number 1, and Garrett Nussmeier being close to being number 1. Look, maybe I don't watch much college football at this point, but that name doesn't move the needle as we got a tank for Nussmeier at this point. Now, let's understand this. Name recognition hurt Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it helped him a little bit getting him to the college he wanted to be, but granted, he was a very good quarterback coming out of high school, played well in college, but the whole family atmosphere where it's like, hey, they know the ropes here, like Deion Sanders, and that may have hurt him in the draft process. Are we going to get that same notion where Eli Manning, who actually pulled I will not play for your franchise, and everybody loved the move because he went to the Giants from the first pick to the 4th pick here? What happens if we hear the same thing behind the scenes, like Arch Manning doesn't want to go to certain franchises? Will he drop to the 5th round? We'll see if that factors in, and I don't think that he's going to. But hear me out on this too. Like Arch Manning, we were heard like royalty. Grandfather's a quarterback. Uncles are quarterbacks. Father was a really good athlete in high school, really good wide receiver, but had like the neck injury and couldn't play at Ole Miss. But understand this. This is a kid with all that hype coming out of high school. He couldn't beat out a 7th round draft pick in the NFL for 2 seasons. And I beat on this all last year. Is there something wrong in Texas where is it just the name that's sticking out? Because all parents, they like the kid a lot. But in no way, shape, or form, he should have very easily beat out Quinn Ewers. Very easily last year. And there's times in games where it's like, Quinn Ewers looks like an average quarterback. Like, I understand if he played behind Cam Ward, like, what did you want him to do? Beat the number 1 quarterback in the country out here in a primetime position where he went number 1 overall? So I do buy it still because his name, and I'm expecting a good season. But make no mistake about it. This guy couldn't beat out a 7th round draft pick. Tough scene.
So let me put a little water on that fire because I disagree with the sentiment. It was always Quinn Ewers' team. It was always Quinn Ewers' program. Quinn Ewers, after injuring his core, which was an issue, did not look like himself. But the numbers that Quinn Ewers put up a season ago in 2023 to lead Texas to its first 10-win season since 2009 and subsequently its first conference championship since 2009 as well, and a college football playoff appearance. It was always Quinn Ewers' job. I have maintained that. I had said it numerous times over the past 2 years of college football. If Quinn Ewers is replaced not because of injury, that's not a great sign for the Longhorns overall. And he was at times. And Arch Manning looked a little bit like a young starting quarterback. Now, Arch did make a few starts when Quinn was dealing with that abdomen strain or the core injury that plagued his 2024 season and put up some good numbers. I think there is a lot of optimism for Arch Manning, and correctly so. But the idea that Manning did not beat out Ewers, so maybe Arch Manning is not as good as we believe him to be, I don't agree with DRS. Frankly, I think it is wrong. You said yourself you don't really watch a lot of college football, so maybe not the best take there. Just my personal opinion.
No, hold on this. If you are a generational quarterback and you can't beat out a 7th round pick for 2 full seasons, he should have been minted the starter the minute he got onto campus in Texas. And trust me, I don't think Quinn Ewers would just put in like, we have a contract, he can't move. But hear what I'm playing out though. How did he not show up to campus and go toe-to-toe with Quinn Ewers for 2 years, and he's not the better quarterback? And Quinn Ewers is the 7th round pick, not number 1 overall. Something is wrong there. Like, that's just my thought process behind looking at it objectively from my point. If he's that good, he should have smoked Quinn Ewers. Smoked him.
College football success does not indicate NFL success. There are great quarterbacks that do a lot in college football. Who's one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time?
A million quarterbacks.
His name is Tim Tebow. Did he do great things in the NFL?
Did
No.
he start right
How about
away in
Vince
college
Young?
football? Did he get in
No.
right away?
Who
He
were
was
the
playing
two
multiple
quarterback
right away with
recruits,
CJ
DRS?
Leak.
He did not start right away. He was behind Chris Leak. Watch football. Did we see, DRS,
Yeah, I
two
just said
quarterback
that. He
recruits with a
still played
perfect
with Chris
recruiting
Leak.
rating
Correct
in
me
the
if I'm wrong,
history
he
of the
was still
sport?
playing in the
There are
national
two quarterback
championship
recruits.
game.
Donnie. Yeah, and so was Arch Manning. Go look at the stats. He played in every game in the college football
Did Tim
playoff.
Tebow
in
start
his
his second
own
year in college
specific-
football? Did Tim Tebow start his second year in college football? Did he?
Sure, but
As a
Donnie,
sophomore,
he's
did Tim Tebow
behind
start?
Quinn
Get done.
Ewers, who
Case.
was also more of a
Who's a seventh-round
generational
pick.
prodigal quarterback than Arch Manning
Prodigal
ever was.
quarterback that went 7th overall? Stop. Or 7th
We're
round pick
talking
who
about
barely got
college
drafted?
football. Your high school recruiting
Yes.
and your college performance does not relate to the National Football League. It never
They
does.
played side
DRS,
by side
DRS.
with each other, and he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. That's an issue. That's a major issue.
It wasn't
the
that
best
it wasn't as
quarterback
good as
prospect
Quinn
they've ever
Ewers.
got to Texas.
It wasn't that it wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers. It was Quinn Ewers' program, which Steve Sarkisian
Why
made
would it be
very
Quinn
clear the
Ewers' program?
entirety of the time that
No.
Arch Manning was in Austin. So for you to argue
Disagree.
that because Ewers is a 7th-round pick,
Quinn
Arch
Ewers'
Manning is
team.
not that good and not deserving of being first overall is
Yes.
asinine. It is wrong.
I
It
just
is
told
incorrect.
you he's going to be number 1 overall. My whole thing
No,
was
see,
I'm
you're
buying
doing
him
your
because
thing now
I
where you
expect him to
double
have a
down
decent
on a
season.
take
No, I'm
that
not
is
doing that.
incorrect
The
when I
best
show it's
quarterback
incorrect.
prospect to ever hit college football can't play
He's
over a
not, though.
7th-round
There were
pick
two
who didn't even
perfectly
play
rated
good.
quarterback
Stop
recruits
it.
in the history
Stop
of the
it.
sport.
Quinn
Vince
Ewers couldn't
Young
even play at
and
Ohio
Quinn
State.
Ewers.
He couldn't even play at
Vince
Ohio
Young and
State.
Quinn Ewers. Go look it up. You're wrong.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
That was the magic of Tiger to me. Why did my mom care about when Tiger was playing? Because you might see something with every shot that you've never seen before. And that was, to me, the magnetic quality. And those guys have a little bit of that, but there aren't a ton of them. So to have those guys in the mix on the big weeks is great for the game.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
As you can imagine, the argument has continued into our commercial break. I, by the way, will buy that Arch Manning is going to be the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft because I think he is a very good quarterback, and I think he will show that this year in the 2025 college football season. Thus, Arch Manning goes number 1 overall. All right, DRS, our next buy or sell is about the New York Giants, your favorite team to bag on. A couple of notable Giants players that have retired their numbers. Lawrence Taylor, number 56. Phil Simms, former guest of the early line, number 11. Eli Manning at number 10. Michael Strahan at number 92. Buy or sell, as we have heard from Abdul Carter, who was drafted 3rd overall by the Giants. He wants the idea of 56 unretired so it can be the number of the Giants franchise defensively, much like number 11 is in Happy Valley for Penn State, of which Abdul Carter wore, following in the footsteps of Micah Parsons, who followed in the footsteps of many at linebacker U, notably LeVar Arrington as well. Buy or sell, DRS, the Giants should unretire number 56 for Abdul Carter.
Absolutely buy it. The retirement of jerseys is ridiculous. Like, retirement should be for the single best football player in the history of the sport, and that's the only guy that gets his number retired. Like Wayne Gretzky in hockey, 99, all franchises, nobody should ever wear it, even if Wayne Gretzky played for multiple franchises there. In Major League Baseball, maybe it's just Babe Ruth, number 3, should be retired by the New York Yankees. Everybody else should be in play, and yes, that includes Derek Jeter. So what an honor it would be for Lawrence Taylor, and they do this all the time in college football. Hey, man, saw that this number is retired. Can I come to your school and play? They ask the family, and almost 99% of the time, that family goes, what an honor it would be. My late father, grandfather, my uncle, whoever would love to have watched you play with his jersey. So for 56 to reappear in a Giants jersey, wrecking quarterbacks left and right, it would be a sensational tribute to Lawrence Taylor, and Lawrence Taylor should absolutely love that with the respect it would have, because it would almost feel like he's been reincarnated watching a football game with the Giants and a number 56 running around like, man, that used to be my jersey, and this kid is blowing up quarterbacks left and right. I love this move. It should be in play in every franchise, and even my Philadelphia Eagles should give number 5 to a punter as opposed to Donovan McNabb and having his number retired in Philadelphia. How about that?
I bet you Donovan McNabb has 0 replica Lombardi trophies in his house in anything that he does. I'm going to sell the notion that the Giants should unretire number 56. I do believe in retiring numbers and having some legacy. I do like that idea. Now, I do think at times jersey retirements have not necessarily lived up to the pantheon of the respect they deserve. I'm not mad at Abdul Carter. I don't think Abdul Carter is doing something forsaking history. I think Abdul Carter is actually trying to present what is a nostalgic thing that also gives respect to the number that we have seen. For instance, DRS, the Dallas Cowboys, their best wide receiver in the history of their organization, they passed down number 88. It is a cool thing, but I also like the idea of jersey retirements because you have earned, based on what you have done for that organization or franchise, the right to have that jersey retired and nobody else to ever wear it. I don't think it's a large story, though, as some tried to make it. Like, hey, Rook, maybe earn your stripes before the first thing that you say is that you should wear number 56, which is the number of Lawrence Taylor. I understand why Abdul Carter is asking for it. I'm going to sell it because I like jersey retirements when they are actually worth their salt, when they actually deserve having that number retired. But I don't mind it if the Giants decided, you know what? Let's make number 56, starting with Abdul Carter and those after him, the number of defensive stars in our organization.
But you also pay a homage to the person that wore it, too. Like, the Giants just handing it over would be wrong. Like, you have to approach Lawrence Taylor, and if he gives you the blessing, it would be phenomenal. But also, like, I talk about the Yankees who have so many jersey numbers retired. Like, if somebody wore the number 2 and wanted to play shortstop, like, you'd have, like, an emblem or one of those gold patches on it, like with a Derek Jeter logo or a Derek Jeter, like, little insignia or, like, a little, mark that on there that says that Derek Jeter wore it. Same thing with Lawrence Taylor, like an LT patch on, like, the left-hand shoulder. Like, oh, that was LT's jersey. That's his retired jersey, but being used by another player. Like, I just like it because I think it pays homage, and I do think the player still will get a kick out of it. Like, again, you're not going to give it like a joke about to a punter, but a legitimate athlete is like, man, I loved you growing up, or I watch you, I emulate my game after you. It would be such an honor to wear the jersey. I think the player would be like, you know what, man? Rock that with pride. Like, it's always going to be technically retired, but I'm giving you my blessing right now as a great football player. I would love it. I would.
Yeah, you do honor the player that came before. Should they give it immediately to Abdul Carter if the Giants decide to do this? Oh, he's probably got to earn it a little bit more than that. JY joins us next.
Career season for Elly De La Cruz. It happened last year. One of the most popular players in baseball as well. And a lot of guys are stealing bases again, and some of them seem like they may be able to steal more bases than Elly De La Cruz on the Cincinnati Reds. So I will ask you this question, Tom. Buy or sell, De La Cruz will lead the league in steals this season?
Sell. I sell on this. I'm not going to say it's already because he's just a handful behind, but there's another Cruz that could easily lead the league in steals, and that's O'Neal Cruz. But like you said, there are a lot of players stealing. Pete Crow Armstrong, I think, is always a viable option. Victor Scott, we know it can be very good. I think that's where we'll see things end up. The fact that he did so last year and he was the odds-on favorite to lead the league in steals this year, I just don't see it repeating. And frankly, there's going to be a point where maybe the Reds need to protect him. Like, they need him to be healthy. You don't want him potentially risk himself on any further injury if they're going to make a push for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll catch fire. I'm going to buy this. And the Reds went for about a week and a half without basically scoring a run. I do think as the weather heats up, he will get on base more. It has been, as I've said, a wintry April in a lot of different locations. And I can't quite figure out why the Reds, especially at home, are not hitting like they have in the past. And I'm just going to put it down as weather and nothing else. So I'm going to say De La Cruz at the end of the year does it. The competition, and Tom brought up a great point. O'Neal Cruz certainly off to a great start too. But I'm going to end up buying this, and I think 85 steals again for Elly De La Cruz, somewhere along those lines. Yeah, why not?
Fantasy Sports Today. Weekends starting at 8 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid. The coach, JY James Young, joins us now to look back on a wild night and a quadruple header of Game 5 action around the NBA postseason, with two more Game 5s coming your way on this Wednesday evening, where the home teams are booked as the favorites to stave off elimination and keep a series alive despite their seasons being on the brink. JY, as always, thanks for being here. Appreciate the time.
Good morning. I did ask before I started that I did not want Donnie Rightside on during this Eastern Conference segment because something tells me he's going to antagonize me about my poor New York Knicks last night.
Yeah, maybe Mason. So, JY.
Come on.
Let's start inside Madison Square Garden. Game number 5 between the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. The Knicks, the opportunity to clinch this opening round set over Detroit, booked as a 5.5-point home favorite. The Pistons had other ideas, showing their resolve once again. They have led in the fourth quarter in all 3 games inside the Mecca. They lead at the end of the final buzzer last night. 106-103. Detroit wins outright as a 5.5-point dog to force a Game 6 tomorrow night back in the Motor City. JY, it was pretty competitive down the stretch. We saw a couple of weird moments for Tibbs, keeping Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart on the sideline when the Pistons were starting to pull away to go up by 2 possessions. How did Detroit outlast New York down the stretch in the fourth quarter?
One, the play of Thompson was phenomenal on an offensive and defensive end, scoring the ball, and obviously his defense on Jalen Brunson was one thing. Number 2, Jalen Duren on the rebound, even though that he got himself into foul trouble, he did a really good job of controlling the boards. And then we get to Tibbs. I think it's about, as a coach, I want people to understand this. You wonder why coaches don't want to burn timeouts early. We always had a rule that you want to save at least 2 timeouts down the stretch of the game. So now we have a situation where Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson are out of the game because they both got injured around the same time, and now you have one timeout left. So Tibbs sat on it, which was probably the most critical mistake he could have done. There's one of three things you do, folks, okay? Number one, you call your last timeout. Probably don't want to do it because you want to be able to advance the ball late in the game. So it comes down to option 2 or option 3. Option 2 is you just take a foul. You take, not a clear path foul, you take a foul, you stop the clock, and then that would allow, obviously, Detroit then to go to the foul line. So then it comes to the option they should have done that I thought no one talked about. Just have someone step out of bounds. Just commit a violation. Just do something to stop the clock and get your best offensive player and your nails and glue guy does everything right in Josh Hart and get them back in the game. I thought it was a very telling scene last night at Madison Square Garden that they didn't consider option 3, especially early on. You can't have those two guys sitting for that long of a time down the stretch of a game.
Jay, well, talk to me about Coach J.B. Bickerstaff because, it's not the Detroit Pistons I brought up with Ben earlier where it's like, hey, every year we make deep runs into the playoffs and we have a lot of success. This is a relatively new franchise in the past, let's just say, decade, not having a lot of playoff success. For them to get hit with punches like in game number 1, should have won, had that huge drought, 21-0 run by the Knicks, and then you saw the foul in the previous game where it's like, if we get that foul call, we probably win. For them to still hold it together and come to the Garden in a closeout situation and win that game showed me a lot.
It did. You know what it shows me? That defense travels. That if you defend and you lock in, you're always going to give yourself a chance. I don't think people understand that defense has to be your absolute. It doesn't matter, Donnie, if you're playing well offensively or not. You have to be able to get stops and grind it out, and especially on the road. And the fact that Detroit, over the course of that fourth quarter, never let go of the rope. It's almost like they learned their lesson from game number 1. They learned their lesson a little bit from game number 3 at home. They held the rope, and they continued to dig in defensively. Listen, the Knicks gave away a lot of points, not just for 2 minutes. Their poor free throw shooting, particularly of Mitchell Robinson, Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson being off. But at the end of the day, for a young Detroit Pistons to walk into MSG in the Mecca, a team that has not closed a series in 99, and give that performance, you have to give them their credit. What a job by Detroit last night.
Detroit has led in the fourth quarter in 4 of our 5 games so far in this opening round. They have led in all 3 games inside Madison Square Garden in that fourth and final quarter as well, which leads us to a game 6 tomorrow night back in Detroit. The Pistons, an ever so slight 2-point favorite to force a decisive game 7 back in the Garden over the weekend. JY, last night entering our 5th game in Indianapolis, it seemed like it was going to be rather clear-cut for the Pacers. 8-point home favorite. No Damian Lillard any longer for Milwaukee. Giannis was going to go out there and give you 30, but you could probably hold that off and win comfortably. The Bucks had other ideas. They blitzed Indiana from the very start, but the Pacers did rally. Tyrese Halliburton sends the game to overtime in regulation. And despite trailing by 7 points with fewer than 40 ticks left in OT, Indiana comes all the way back to win a dramatic thriller, 119-118 over Milwaukee, courtesy of the game-winning layup from Tyrese Halliburton with fewer than 3 seconds remaining in the extra session. It led to a lot extracurricular after the game and after the celebrations for Indiana, clinching this round 1 series. But JY, how did the Pacers find that response late in regulation and late in overtime as well?
Glenn, Doc, Rivers. Simply put, you can't forget the fact, Ben, that they flew it in overtime. They blew it in regulation as well. I mean, they blew it twice in the last minute, last 30 seconds. Can't get the ball in, turnovers. Then you get a situation where, it's so telling that at the end of the game, they went high ball screen, switch Giannis. Giannis reaches, allows Halliburton to get to his right hand, instead of pushing him to his left. He's on the left side of the floor. It was just a comedy of errors for a team in Milwaukee. You're like, no Dame. Oh, he switched the lineup. Brook Lopez to the bench. Okay, I understand that. Bobby Porter started the lineup. Gary Trent, Kevin Porter Jr. Switch your lineup completely. Great start. And then they became Milwaukee. So I think while there's going to be a lot of talk understandably so, about what happened between Tyrese Halliburton's father and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think the story's got to be Milwaukee. Are they done? If you look at the fact that the number of free agents they have, right, with Portis, with Brook Lopez, Kuzma trade didn't work, Dame at 34 with Achilles injury, we'll be lucky if we see him next year. Does Giannis look around and say, I got to get out of here? There's no help here for me. I got to go somewhere else. He said it before the season, Ben, that he needed to make a run. This is not the run. And if you look at next year, there's no run coming either. If you're Giannis, you have to think about asking out. And if you're Milwaukee, do you now say, based on the rest of the Eastern Conference in the future, is it better for us to trade this guy now with tremendous trade value and literally try and start over?
Yeah, that is going to be an interesting topic of conversation in the offseason nonetheless, because as a pro player in his prime that wants to make a run at championships, that's not coming next year, maybe even the year after that in Milwaukee. Looks like it might be a rebuild, and quite frankly, that rebuild include him or not. I'll tell you where there's not a rebound, that's the Boston Celtics here. 120-89 last night, easily dispatching of the Magic. My question for you, Coach, isn't necessarily the Celtics. We expected them to win this series, and easily, whether it be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, which it turned out to be. Where do the Magic go next year, and how do we get some offense for that team, Coach?
Well, listen, Banchero and Wagner are two core players. You got to get the other Wagner back from injury. Jalen Suggs took a big step offensively before he got hurt. Guys, KCP love him. They need a shooter. They need someone that can knock down shots because of the usage rate of particularly Banchero and Wagner. Guys that can pass the ball. You need someone that can stretch the floor. They need shooting, but they got the young coach and they got the young core that they could be a team for the future.
Paolo Banchero was in foul trouble really all night long, picked up his fifth foul early in the third quarter. The Celtics went on their run and never looked back. More around the Eastern Conference and out west at Denver. Up next here on the Early Line.
Career season for Elly De La Cruz. It happened last year. One of the most popular players in baseball as well. And a lot of guys are stealing bases again, and some of them seem like they may be able to steal more bases than Elly De La Cruz on the Cincinnati Reds. So I will ask you this question, Tom. Buy or sell? De La Cruz will lead the league in steals this season.
Sell. I sell on this. I'm not going to say it's already because he's just a handful behind, but there's another Cruz that could easily lead the league in steals, and that's O'Neal Cruz. But like you said, there are a lot of players stealing. Pete Crow Armstrong, I think, is always a viable option. Victor Scott, we know it can be very good. I think that's where we'll see things end up. The fact that he did so last year and he was the odds-on favorite to lead the league in steals this year, I just don't see it repeating. And frankly, there's going to be a point where maybe the Reds need to protect him. Like, they need him to be healthy. You don't want him potentially risk himself on any further injury if they're going to make a push for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll catch fire. I'm going to buy this. And the Reds went for about a week and a half without basically scoring a run. I do think as the weather heats up, he will get on base more. It has been, as I've said, a wintry April in a lot of different locations. And I can't quite figure out why the Reds, especially at home, are not hitting like they have in the past. And I'm just going to put it down as weather and nothing else. So I'm going to say De La Cruz at the end of the year does it. The competition, and Tom brought up a great point. O'Neal Cruz certainly off to a great start too. But I'm going to end up buying this, and I think 85 steals again for Elly De La Cruz, somewhere along those lines. Yeah, why not?
Fantasy Sports Today. Weekends starting at 8 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Wednesday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid. So, JY, of our 4 opening round series around the Eastern Conference, Only one still needs to be figured out. Of course, that is the Pistons and the Knicks. Tomorrow night is game number 6 in the Motor City. That means 3 of the 4 have already been clinched. The Pacers and the Celtics last night. The Cavaliers in a 4-game sweep and an easy one of the Miami Heat. Updating those Eastern Conference odds right now. Boston minus 145. Price slightly stronger after dispatching Orlando in the gentleman's sweep last night. The Cavaliers moved back by a dime at plus 170. But JY, have you seen anything early on in this opening round that would change your belief that ultimately in the Eastern Conference Finals, it is still the Cavaliers and the Celtics as we have projected it being since early January?
No, because for me, I don't think New York's going to have the horses to even compete with Boston. And if you look at the way how Cleveland looked versus Miami, by the way, shout out to the Miami Heat for their incredible fold job that they did games 3 and games 4. You want to talk about a team that may have to start thinking about starting over. I hate to say it, Miami Heat may be one of them. But the way Cleveland looked, Ben, was so impressive, particularly, not only the game 3 win, but to come out game 4 to be up by a 40-piece at halftime. They're playing like the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks, obviously, if they get by Detroit, I'm honestly concerned. Is Jalen Brunson even going to make it? I mean, the guy rolls his ankle at least twice a game, right? So to me, that's obviously going to be an issue there. And I just think Detroit will be too big for the moment. So obviously, I think it's an easy pathway for both teams to be to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I don't think either series, and I'm a Knicks fan, goes past 5 games.
Let's get out to the West here, talking about 5 games here. How about a 3-2 series lead now for the Denver Nuggets after handling business in their own arena in game number 5, 131-115 over the Clippers. Impressive performance by Jamal Murray, because if you see Jokic scores 13 points, Coach, how can they win that game going away? Well, they did. The Nuggets now in command of the series against the Clippers.
And when I saw the number, the over, I think it was like 203 or some weird number, I'm like, that game's got to go over, right? And you started thinking about Denver just hadn't shown themselves offensively yet. Well, that was Jamal Murray. And Bubble Murray, Playoff Murray, whatever Murray you call, he showed up and showed out. And what a performance with the 40-plus points. So to me, if you're Denver, you have to feel better about yourselves with the fact of you got a very subpar game scoring-wise with Nikola Jokic, right? Game number 4, he went off. He carried you to the finish line. Game 5, role players played better at home. Gordon was better. Obviously, Brody was better. Michael Porter Jr. was better. And obviously, we talked about Jamal Murray. So it sets up an interesting spot here where I've said from the get-go, Donnie, this is going 7. And I fully expect the Clippers to hold serve in Game 6, send it back to the Mile High, and see what happens there. And that's where you get concerned if you are the Clippers, because let's be honest, there is the James Harden Game 7. You're a Sixers fan. You know exactly where I'm going. Game 7, he struggles. But I do think the Clippers find a way to win Game 6 and force a deciding Game 7.
So, JY, when we look at where things are around the Western Conference, we have that Game 6 tomorrow night in Los Angeles with the Clippers and the Nuggets. We also have a ton of Game 5s tonight, a doubleheader to break down in just a matter of moments. Let's keep an eye on the Western Conference odds as well. The Thunder, minus 185 to win the Western Conference crown. Of course, OKC sweeping Memphis in 4 games. Maybe not overly easy in those 2 games in the grind city, but still getting the job done in a 4-game sweep. The Warriors have that 3-1 lead. The T-Wolves have the 3-1 lead. The Nuggets now a better price by $5 than that of the Clippers entering last night's Game 5 at altitude. Denver was 24-1. LA was 10-1. When OKC is such a strong favorite at minus 185, and deservedly so, do you think there is value on another team out west?
I mean, listen, I'm of the belief before the playoffs started that I thought Minnesota was going to make the Western Conference Finals. I just look at the way that Ann is starting to play. We'll break down that game a little bit more. But I'm going to give people something to think about. My concern with the Thunder is, although they got challenged a little bit, come back in Game 3, tight game, Game 4, but I'm concerned about the layoff with OKC. And then whichever team comes out of this series between the Clippers and the Nuggets are going to be battle-tested. Here's a crazy thought. I think there's a chance that the Oklahoma City Thunder, ready, could drop game 1 of the Western Conference semis. So maybe wait on the Thunder, see if they lose, let them drop a little bit, because it's going to drop a little bit because they'll lose home court advantage. Maybe drops down 40, 50 cents, maybe more than that, and then jump on OKC to make it out of the Western Conference. There's a way you can try and find a different pathway, Oklahoma City to win it, and win yourself a little bit more money.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the overall odds there and the shifting on a night-to-night basis. Like, we're just talking about the Clippers, like an 18-1, 13-1 price, let's just say 24-1s, even higher a few days previous before that. So of the next upcoming series here, if you were to get in on a team right now, Coach, who would that be? Just price appropriate, not necessarily you love them to actually win the championship.
I mean, I keep looking at Minnesota, guys. I keep looking at if Ant always, I've thought, could take his game to another level. Did he find it, right? And it's not just, guys, it's not just the 43 points. It's the fact that 6 or more assists in the 3 games that they've won in this series in regards to getting players better. It's Jaden McDaniels, the guy that was getting 12 points a game and averaging nearly 20 in this first round versus the Lakers. It's Naz Reid off the bench. It's DiVincenzo. It's all these other factors. And guys, they did go to the Western Conference Finals last year. And now Julius Randle can now be sometimes the 3rd scorer instead of thinking he's 1A. I think the T-Wolves are a very interesting team. I think they're going to get to the Western Conference Finals either way, whether it's against the Warriors or the Rockets.
And might that start early for Minnesota? Game 5 tonight in L.A., they're a road underdog against the Lakers, but with an opportunity to clinch. Same story for the Golden State Warriors in Houston in our first game of 2. The Dubs, a road underdog in H-Town, but the chance to clinch their opening round set. JY will preview our Game 5 doubleheader tonight on a Wednesday around the association. Up next on the Overload.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Second game of doubleheader. We don't know exactly who's going to be in the lineup, and maybe you get an extended game number 1, which means tired bullpens and closers used up, which aren't available for game number 2, and maybe finding some extra shots here. But I do think the pitching matchup more susceptible, Tom, to runs here.
This is part of what we look at. Like I said, I don't expect both teams to win. So we have a pitcher who may not be sustainable at 28.6, but he's playing well right now.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're going to trade Durant, right, it means things are getting weird anyway. Teams are going to, before they go for Durant, they're going to go for Devin Booker. That's just the reality of it.
You get rid of Durant, or do you do the crazy one? Because you're so far out of the West, do you get rid of Booker? Because D-Book will bring you far more in a return.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A doubleheader of NBA playoff action on this Wednesday. 2 Game 5s 2 opportunities to clinch. However, with that being said, the home teams are booked as a favorite tonight in both spots. And if you're favored to avoid elimination, well, then those clinching potentials not nearly as high. JY, we start in Houston. Donnie's Rockets referendum to save the integrity of the regular season very much on the line tonight. Houston, a 4-point home favorite in our first of 2, taking on the Golden State Warriors, a total of 203.5. Of course, the Dubs up in this series 3-1, despite the fact that Houston is the 2 seed and has home floor advantage. JY, do you agree with the odds? Will the Rockets keep their season afloat with a victory at home in Game 5 tonight?
I'm concerned with the line being 4. I wish it was a little bit closer because I would have went more of a money line because I think it's going to be a tight contest. Simply put, Ben, which Jalen Green are we going to get? Are we going to get the Jalen Green in games 1, 3, and 4? Or are we going to get the 38-point performance Jalen Green that we got in game number 2? Look at his points prop. If I'm not mistaken, it's dropped 3 straight games all the way down to 16.5. I took about 17.5 thought it was going to be better. Did not. So you have to look to go back to them. Go back to Jalen Green. If you look for another spark, what can you get out of a guy like Atari Eason? And if you're Ime Udoka, you're seeing him struggle. I know it sounds crazy. You got a guy in Cam Whitmore that comes off the bench that can score. If he is struggling, Jalen Green, do you get him out the game and try something else because he's looked like a shell of himself? That being said, I think it's razor thin. If you want to take the Warriors on a plus of points, you can. I think the Rockets squeeze out a really tightly contested game tonight and send it back to the chase.
Yeah, it's interesting. Look at the line movement here. Opened up at 3.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook here in New Jersey. Coach has moved to 4, despite if you look at these stats on the FanDuel site here, 77% of the tickets, almost 8 out of every 10 tickets coming in on the Warriors, but only 60% of the money, and the line not necessarily moving in that direction. Might be one to watch, but certainly expecting a good performance tonight, 7:30 tip time. But all eyes, Coach, will be focused on the West Coast tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Los Angeles Lakers. Game number 5, a closeout scenario, not for the Lakers, but for the Timberwolves tonight. That line opened up as a 5.5-point favorite, still sits at 5.5 a total, which opened up at 210, now sits at 209.5. There's no way, Coach, the NBA lets Luka and LeBron out after 5 games. That's all I'll say on the handicap. How about you?
I mean, conspiracy theories matter sometimes.
Come on.
I guess.
Come on.
But listen, at the end of the day, they would love this to go 6. I would be stunned if the Lakers don't win tonight and win by, I'm going to say, at least 8 to 10 points. There's no way, even though I thought he was tremendous, they're not going to let Ant get 43 on him tonight. It's just not possible. You have to try everything and anything to make sure it doesn't happen. I think LeBron will put this team on his back. If you want to look over his points, rebounds, and assists, go ahead and take a look at it. I think he's going to have an absolutely monster performance, because it would be, honestly, for a guy that's about his legacy, really hurt him a little bit if he gets rolled 4-1 in a series and loses at home. I expect the Lakers to play their best ball. I think the Timberwolves finish it in 6, but I expect the Lakers to cover the spread tonight.
Much like DRS alluded to for our first matchup in Houston, the Warriors getting 70% of the bets right now when it comes to the spread in that opening game. 63% of the bets for our nightcap in LA on Minnesota. And yet the lines remaining pretty strong and steady in favor of our home favorites. Smells a little bit fishy to me. JY, you saw the prompts right there. You highlighted LeBron James. He needs a huge night tonight. Luka Doncic at 31.5. But you talked about the ascending superstar where we have seen the last few postseasons in Anthony Edwards. If Minnesota keeps this game close tonight, if Minnesota has the opportunity to clinch, how many points does Ant score?
It's got to get 30. It's got to get 30 and he's got to get at least, 6 assists. So to me, I've equated before that the 3 wins that they've had, he's had 6, 8, and 9 assists, if I'm not mistaken, or 6, 9, and 9 assists. So one of the best bets to look at, under 5.5 assists tonight for Anthony Edwards. He may not score, but they make sure he doesn't get other guys the ball.
JY, do any of these series even get to 7 games?
No, those two don't. Only Denver versus the Clippers go 7, and who knows if the Knicks don't figure out their offense, maybe that goes 7 as well.
A fadeaway to the break from JY in hour number 3 up next.
I hit that bing bong.